welcome to the golf game, because I actually think this is our golf game. You know, it's this fascinating thing. When you speak to a group of corporate women, any place in the world, one of the very first questions that you get asked is, do I have to play golf? It's amazing. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's one of the very first questions you get asked. And what I want to tell all of you is that I think you should play golf if you like golf, if you think golf is fun, if you've got 4 or 5 hours to waste during your week, you know, because you don't have anything else to do. If you're good at making a fool of yourself and then continuing, you know, the conversation. But if you're playing golf because somebody told you it was the answer to your business career, I want to tell you, I think you're wrong. I actually think that it's just as crazy as back in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, they told women if we were going to succeed, we needed to wear these navy blue suits with little teeny tiny pinstripes down the front and these bow ties that sort of were at our neck, floppy ties, and we were supposed to look and act like junior men. I actually think the 1960s navy blue suit is 2009's golf game. That somehow or other we're trying to make ourselves into something we're not. And the funny thing about it is they make the deal in the locker room and we're never going there. So you need to play golf if you want to play golf. You don't play golf because somebody told you that that's where you belong, because it's actually a very uncomfortable. We think you're supposed to go there and talk about business. What happens is you're supposed to go there and make the relationship, and it's actually a violation half the time to talk about business, because everybody's supposed to be relaxing until they get to the locker room, and then they can talk about it. So what do we do? And I think that that's really one of the big struggles is, as we look at everything, what do? We've done a great job as women sort of getting up to the middle, and we just can't seem to get beyond it. It's very interesting. Back in the beginning, they told us when they first started looking at women in business, they said, well, you know, women aren't well enough educated. That's why they haven't gone farther in the corporate world. So what happened? Women went out and got educated in such numbers that now the crisis in this country is we don't have enough men getting educated. That women, you know, I think every place with business school, women are the majority in higher education in the United States today. And in the medical field, it's like 55, 58%. I mean, so it's huge differences in numbers. So we went out and got educated. Then they said, well, you know, women haven't been in the pipeline long enough. Okay, so I can look around at a lot of women. We know we've been in the pipeline long enough. Decades and decades and decades. So clearly that's not it. Then the next set of studies was, well, you know, women don't have mentors. So every organization in the world began mentoring programs for women. Companies began mentoring programs for women. Interestingly enough, about twice as many women are apt to say that they have a mentor as men. Now, I think the guys probably lie, but it doesn't make any difference. Women certainly have lots of mentors. Then, of course, we come to the issue of families, which we all know is a huge issue for all of us, probably the only one in this that hasn't been completely solved. Next set of studies, probably sometime in the early 90s, said, well, you know, women take staff positions, not line positions. So women don't have P&L responsibility. They only, they want to go places like HR and PR. And so younger women, you know, were clear that they made sure they got themselves in places where they had profit and loss responsibility. Then we looked around and we said, well, you know, there must be something else. So the big studies came out probably in the end of the 90s, early 2000s. It's about women don't have access to informal networks. Come on, there's seats up here. Okay? I didn't have a powerful enough point. We'll tell you the story later. You got picked on. So then they said, well, women don't have access to informal networks. That means we don't play golf. Okay, I know lots of successful men who don't play golf, by the way. Next one was, well, you know what? Women don't really want it. That's my favorite. That, you know, how many women in this room spend more time in this building than they do any place else in their life? Okay, but you don't actually want, you'd rather be number 2 than number 1. That one doesn't track at all, but there was the whole big thing, women really don't want it. The latest set of studies say that it's all actually about stereotyping, that we all buy into the old stereotypes that men take charge and women take care, and that women and men alike buy into that stereotype. I think all of that's very interesting, but I actually don't believe any of them are the answer. I think that the one thing that nobody studied and nobody thought about yet is who we are and where we came from. And that is that everybody in this room is a woman. And we were all born on that team as women. And it's time we started playing there. It's time we understood that for every woman in this room who succeeds, I succeed a little. And for every woman in this room who fails, I fail a little. Because we're connected. Because we are still looked at as a group. Now, I know a lot of people get really uncomfortable when I say that. But I'm going to tell you some stories so that you understand how true it is. About 2 years ago, when Senator Hillary Clinton was first running for president, she was giving a speech in upstate New York, and she had the flu. And her knees were very wobbly, and as the speech was sort of coming to an end, it was clear that she was about to sort of hit the floor or whatever else, and somebody brought a chair up behind her, and she sort of flopped into the chair. And the next morning, the New York Times had big banner headlines, "Mrs. Clinton faints." I saw it, I thought, isn't that interesting? She no longer is a senator, she lost her senatorial title. And I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay, faints makes me think of Gone with the Wind and vapors and all the rest of that. Not a very powerful word. Really not a very powerful word. But I thought, you know what, Gail, you spend so much time thinking about this gender, race, and ethnicity stuff that you're just over-interpreting. Well, about 6 weeks later, a couple of my students at Georgia Tech come running in with a bunch of headlines, and they say, "Did you see what happened this weekend?" And I said, "What?" And they show me these headlines. Mike Krzyzewski. How many people in this room know who Mike Krzyzewski is? Good. Okay. Mike Krzyzewski is the coach of the Duke University men's basketball team, one of the winningest coaches in U.S. basketball history. He had the same flu as Mrs. Clinton, and exactly the same thing happened to him in Cameron Stadium during a basketball game. And the next morning, big banner headlines, USA Today's sports page, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, all the big sports pages. Coach K collapses. So everybody says, okay, that's amusing. Power collapses. It doesn't faint. When you think we're not connected, I want you to understand that the language that gets used about us is different and less powerful than the language that gets used about men. It's just a reality. When I say it, I actually want to say she fainted. It's the word I use to connect with a woman. But when you think about it, collapse is a power word. Faint is not. It makes a difference. So when you want to say it's all about me, I want to tell you that there are societal things and cultural things which make it about us, not about me. And it becomes really important to understand that there is power in the group and that we have to understand our own connectedness if we're going to move to those next levels of success.